What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tirfon Orbital. Today I would like to talk about another install. It's all I have to offer on this channel. Thank you for stopping by, but all you're going to get is lightsaber installs. I have nothing else to offer. I'm just a man talking about lightsaber installs. It's all I got. Anyway, I'm going to talk about an Ultimate Works Kishi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So this was sent to me by the customer, obviously. Customer purchased one of these install slots for my May 4th sale. So this was sent to me empty already. Full disclosure, I'm ignorant to this hilt. I've never heard of it. However, I have heard of Ultimate Works, obviously. Typically, with Ultimate Works hilts, there are existing cores inside of the hilt. They use a proprietary core with a proprietary connector. So I already knew that this was going to be a little bit of a challenge. However, most of the work was already done for me in that this was already empty. So the core was already out of this. The connector was already out of it. So one of the things that I had to think about, however, was how we were going to get the switches to work on this. So I did have to make a compromise in that we went with a single button setup in this. But we were able to figure it out, right? So I did go with a removable chassis system. So I do want to come into Fusion and talk about that. And then, of course, we will come up top, do a quick demo, put a blade in it, and then we'll get the heck out of here, right? So let's come into Fusion and talk about this chassis. Come along with me. Okay, so here it is. Here is the chassis that I designed for this Ultimate Works Kishi. Okay, so fully removable chassis. Obviously, here is our battery tray. We do have a 24mm speaker at the bottom here. This is from Smuggler's Outpost. Okay, some light greebly work on both sides of the chassis. This corrugated channel here I have utilized as my wire passage. Okay, I've cleverly hidden that as my wire channel, right? So that is where I bring my leads up to the board, right? So we've got leads for my negative battery terminal. I've got a 3 leads for my 2020 NeoPixel strip, and then of course our speaker leads, right? Along the spine of the chassis, there are some windows for a 2020 NeoPixel strip. I do have some Mylar in front of that for some diffusion. And then of course we've got some chunky greebly work along that spine as well. Here is our Proffie tray. Proffie does kind of slide up underneath this lip. It is secured in place. And then of course we have a kill switch here. And then some like spine ridges here as well. Up top, we have a 6-rail PCB. This is from, I believe this is from KR Sabers, this one. And that's it. Relatively simple, straightforward, removable chassis. I am continued. I can't talk. The Carbon X1 continues to amaze me, right? So this chassis was fully printed in FDM with a 0.2 nozzle. There's no like greeblies that were glued to the side of it. It was all 0.2 at like a small layer height. I'm really, really happy with the kind of detail that I'm getting with this printer. I don't know if this is like the kind of detail that I would have always been getting with FDM or what, but the kind of fidelity that I'm getting with this printer is kind of shocking, right? So really happy with it. All right, let's come up top. Okay, so here it is, the Ultimate Works Kishi. Very, very interesting looking hilt. Very straightforward looking hilt, honestly. We got a cover tech, 2-button. So initially, I'm assuming that this was a 2-button setup hilt. However, we only went with a single button, and I'll talk about why we did that in a second, right? So that is pretty much it. What you see is what you get with this hilt. Let's talk about the chassis, okay? So here is the chassis. I did a pass of pewter rub and buff along the entire chassis, and then I sealed it. There's that. Yeah, I mean, the greebly work on this with that 0.2 nozzle is really, really surprising. I'm really happy with how clear everything comes, right? Proffie V2 in this build, 24mm speaker, 6 rail PCB. So let's talk about how to use this guy, okay? So spring side is your negative. This takes an 18650 button top battery. So take the flat part of your battery, put it in your battery tray. So this was already on. There is that 2020 NeoPixel strip. Okay. Once you get your battery in, you can put your chassis in, right? So unthread your pommel. It doesn't matter which orientation you put your chassis in the hilt. You just kind of slide it in place until it stops, and then you can thread your pommel on until that stops. Now, let's talk about these switches, okay? So there are 2 holes for switches here. In order to install this hilt and have a removable, so the only way I was able to install this hilt was have a removable chassis. I feel like we're past the point of where we're having like sled chassis where you've got wires here where you kind of pull a chassis out while it's still connected with wires. I didn't want to do that, I didn't want to do like an internal chassis with a charge port. I mean, there really wouldn't be a way I could do that either. Maybe with a speaker pod, but I didn't want to do that. So I had to go with a fully removable chassis. The only way I was able to do that with the length that I needed was to have an upper PCB here. Because this PCB needed to stop right here, I wouldn't have been able to get a switch down here. I had to use this hole for our single switch. Now, another thing I had to figure out was securing this switch in this hole without having access to it, right? So this whole shroud, if you remove this cover tech and you remove this thumb screw, this whole shroud will remove, and there's like a window here, like an access panel. So what I had to do is create an upper PCB holder for my 6 rail PCB with like a window in it. So I could wire up my switch, put some E6000 in that switch so it wouldn't set immediately, put my shroud in place, spin that shroud, and make sure that that switch is in place as that E6000 cured. That was probably not a very good way of describing what I had to do, but that was the only way that I would have been able to keep that switch in place without having to like drill a hole or surface mount a switch. That was the only way I was able to do that, right? I'm assuming that maybe Ultimate Works either had a proprietary control box up here, or perhaps they had like a threaded switch solution, or obviously they probably had their core system in place up there. But that was the only way we were able to do that, right? So anyhow, once your chassis rather is in place, you're ready to go. Okay. Let's come down to the bottom. So let's see what else we've got on here.
Father's lightsaber. It's the weapon of a Jedi Knight.
Okay. Let's put a blade in it. Luckily, I'm prepared. 1-inch blade holder. So we've got a handy knurled thumb screw in the front here that will serve as your blade retention. Nice deep blade socket in this one. So you want to slide your blade all the way down so it's resting on those PCB pins. Then tighten your blade retention. And you're ready to go. Oh. Make sure that's down all the way. All right, let's see what else we put on here. So to scroll through your fonts, it's going to be a long press of that single button while the blade is parallel. Okay. One more.
I am no Jedi.
Let's see what else. One more.
Crystal focus.
It is a good feeling hilt. All right. So that is it. That is the Ultimate Works Kishi that has been installed with a custom chassis. So this one, like I said, it was a little bit of a challenge figuring out what I was going to do with the switches on this one. Okay, so that's all I got. To the customer, thank you very much for your patience. I will be getting this in the mail today or tomorrow. To the viewers, if anyone has any questions about this particular install, please do not be a stranger. I've had a couple of questions and requests for this chassis. I'm not quite sure. I will be adding this one to my online chassis index simply because there's just like a little bit of a crazy modification that I had to do to the switches in there. So I'm not sure that I'll be adding this one unless people are okay with doing their own modification to that switch. So if people are okay with that, just reach out to me, send me a direct message, and I'll add it to my online shop, right? So anyhow, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.